Quezon City, Manila, July 16, 2026. The sun had barely risen over the bustling streets of the Philippines capital when something extraordinary began to unfold. It started with a handful of fans, then dozens, then hundreds. By 6 a.m., the street outside Alex Eala's family home was unrecognizable. A sea of Philippine flags, hand-painted banners, and thousands of faces united by a single purpose: to see their hero. The scene was chaotic, electric, and completely unprecedented. Cars slowed to a crawl. Traffic ground to a halt. The local barangay officials arrived first, followed by the police, followed by the media. The chanting began quietly at first, a soft murmur that grew into a roar. Alex, Alex, Alex. Inside the house, a young woman who had conquered Wimbledon's center court, who had stared down Iga Swiatek without flinching, who had become the first Filipino to reach the fourth round of a Grand Slam. That same woman was frozen, not by fear, not by intimidation, but by something she never expected: overwhelming emotion. Alex Eala had been celebrated at Malacanang Palace. She had received a presidential citation from Ferdinand Marcos Jr. She had been called the biggest draw in women's tennis by former pros. She had signed autographs for 8 hours at a sold-out fan meet. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared her for what she saw outside her own front door. The fans had come from everywhere. From Manila, from the provinces, from overseas. They had slept on the sidewalk. They had traveled for hours. They had brought letters, gifts, hand-painted banners, and homemade trophies. They had come to see their hero, to touch her hand, to tell her, face to face, what her journey meant to them. And then Alex Eala did something that shocked everyone. She walked outside. Welcome to RallyVerse. July 16th, 2026. Quezon City, Metro Manila. The day after her sold-out fan meet at Glorietta Activity Center, Alex Eala was supposed to rest. She had spent the previous evening signing autographs, posing for photos, and playing games with hundreds of supporters who had lined up for up to 8 hours just to see her. The event had been a massive success, with fans packing the venue and lining the glass railings on every floor of the mall. But the fans weren't done. Word had spread overnight. Eala was still in the country. She was staying at her family home in Quezon City. And the Filipino people, the same people who had stayed up until midnight to watch her matches, who had organized public watch parties across the nation, who had filled stadiums with Philippine flags, they wanted more. By dawn, the street was unrecognizable. Hundreds had become thousands. Philippine flags of every size waved in the morning breeze. Hand-painted banners with messages like "Alex, you are our pride," and "Laban Lang, Alex." Lined the fences. Parents held their children on their shoulders. Teenagers clutched tennis balls and markers, hoping for an autograph. Elderly fans sat on folding chairs, refusing to leave until they had seen her. The local barangay officials arrived first, then the police, then the media. The scene was chaotic, electric, and completely unprecedented. Neighbors peered from their windows. Delivery drivers abandoned their routes to join the crowd. The energy was palpable, almost overwhelming. Inside the house, Eala watched from behind the curtains. Her family surrounded her. Her mother held her hand. Her father stood by the door, ready to intervene if things got out of control. The question hung in the air. What do we do? For a young woman who had faced the defending Wimbledon champion on center court, who had saved 2 set points in a tiebreak that would define her career, who had remained composed under the brightest lights in tennis. This was different. This was personal. This was her home, her family, her sanctuary. And then she made a decision that would shock everyone. At 10:47 a.m., the front door of the Eala family home opened. The crowd erupted. What happened next would be replayed on news channels across the Philippines for days. Alex Eala, still in her casual clothes, stepped outside. No security, no handlers, no carefully choreographed entrance. Just a 21-year-old woman walking into a sea of thousands, determined to meet every single one of them. I genuinely felt everyone's love and support during each match. So it's wonderful to be home again, she had said the day before. But this was something else entirely. This was love in its most raw, unfiltered form. Eala moved through the crowd with a grace that seemed almost impossible. She signed autographs. She posed for selfies. She hugged children. She accepted letters and gifts. She listened to stories of fans who had stayed up all night to watch her matches, of families who had gathered around televisions to cheer her on, of children who had picked up tennis rackets because of her. On Dami Nio Pala, she had quipped the day before. But now, looking at the thousands gathered outside her home, the words seemed almost inadequate. The moment that broke everyone came when Eala reached a group of elderly fans. They had been waiting since 4 a.m., refusing to leave despite the heat and the crowd. One woman, tears streaming down her face, handed Eala a hand-painted banner that read, "You remind us why we are a great race." President Marcos had said those very words at Malacanang Palace. And now, a fan was repeating them back to her. Eala's composure cracked. Just for a moment. Her eyes glistened. Her voice trembled. She hugged the woman and whispered something that no one could hear, but everyone could feel. The scenes outside Eala's home were the culmination of a phenomenon that had been building for weeks. A phenomenon that the world was now calling Eelamania. It had started quietly. A few fans here, a few flags there. But as Eala's Wimbledon run progressed, the movement grew. Public watch parties were organized across the Philippines. Fans gathered in malls, in community centers, in streets, waving Philippine flags and cheering for their daughter. The Philippine Sports Commission organized a public viewing in Pasig City, where more than 100 fans gathered to cheer for the 21-year-old. And then came the upset. Eala defeated defending champion IGA, Swiatek, on center court. The nation erupted. The phones at Malacanang Palace started ringing. The Presidential Citation was prepared, and a young woman from Quezon City became a national hero. The homecoming that followed was unprecedented. Fans lined up for up to 8 hours at the Glorietta Activity Center. The mall's 3 floors were packed with supporters. Eala stayed long after the program ended, greeting fans who couldn't get inside. It was a rare opportunity to see the rising star in a public setting, with crowds overflowing across 3 floors surrounding the mall's activity center. Spin.ph reported. One fan, digital artist Raul Panazares, said he waited 8 hours for the chance to meet her. "This is it. Finally. Worth it ong 8 hours. Sulitong pagid," he said. Another fan, sketch artist Irvin Lawrence, said Eala symbolizes the characteristics of Filipinos. "Every time we watch her, we can relate to her," he said, but the fan meet was just the beginning. The gathering outside her home proved that Eelamania was not just a passing trend. It was a movement that had touched every corner of the Philippines. What made the scene outside Eala's home so remarkable wasn't just the number of fans. It was what those fans represented. For decades, the Philippines had produced world-class boxers, basketball players, and even a world-class pool player or two. But tennis? Tennis was a sport for the wealthy elite. A sport played in exclusive clubs, not in the crowded streets of Manila. Eala changed all of that. She had come from the same streets, the same neighborhoods, the same schools. She had left her family at 13 years old to train at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Spain. She had sacrificed her childhood for a dream that seemed impossible for someone from her background. And now, she was the biggest draw in women's tennis. The fans outside her home weren't just celebrating a tennis player. They were celebrating themselves. their potential, their dreams, their belief that a Filipino could compete with the best in the world and win. Alex Eala embodies Filipino world-class talent, inspiring grit and hard work, while telling the world that Filipinos have what it takes to compete and win, said Globe President and CEO Carl Cruz. Eala herself seemed to understand the weight of the moment. After the fan meet, she spoke about what it meant to be a role model. "I'm grateful for the opportunity to inspire and elevate Filipino talent on the global stage," she said. She also shared her definition of courage, a word that had taken on new meaning after her Wimbledon run. Courage looks like showing up after you've had a bad loss, showing up after you've had a long day, or maybe something else is not going right in other aspects of your life. "So courage to me looks like showing up when you need to be there," she said. Standing outside her home, surrounded by thousands of adoring fans, Alex Eala showed up. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. The gathering outside Alex Eala's home lasted for hours. By the time the crowd finally dispersed, the sun was setting over Quezon City. The street was littered with confetti, discarded banners, and the footprints of thousands of Filipinos who had come to see their hero. Inside the house, Eala sat with her family, exhausted but grateful. She had signed hundreds of autographs. She had posed for thousands of photos. She had hugged children, comforted elderly fans, and listened to stories that would stay with her forever. But the celebration wasn't over. Eala still had work to do. She was scheduled for more fan events with Nike, BPI, and Globe over the coming days. Then, she would turn her attention to the North American hardcourt swing. The Wimbledon, D.C. Open in Washington from July 27th to August 2nd. The National Bank Open in Toronto from August 1st to 13th. The Cincinnati Open. And finally, the U.S. Open, where her world know. 28 ranking would see her seated. But no matter how far she went, she would never forget what happened on that July morning. The moment she walked outside her home and saw thousands of Filipinos waving her flag. The moment she realized that her journey was not just her own. The moment she understood that she had become something bigger than a tennis player. She had become a symbol of hope, a symbol of pride, a symbol of what the Philippines could achieve on the global stage. From the cracked courts of Quezon City to world number 28. From a 13-year-old girl alone in Spain to a national hero celebrated by presidents and adored by millions. From being told she couldn't do it to standing on the brink of Grand Slam glory. Alex Eala has defied every expectation, and the love she received outside her home that morning was proof that she has inspired an entire nation along the way. Laban lang. Always. And remember, on RallyVerse, we bring you the stories that define the sport, the drama, the emotions, the moments that change everything. Stay tuned for more.